Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is David Talbot, Managing Director, Head of Research here at Red Cloud Securities. Sorry for the technical glitch there, but I am delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar, a special one on uranium today. We are here with Blue Sky Uranium's President and CEO, Nikolaos Cacos, and its VP Exploration and Development, Guillermo Prensado. And they are going to discuss the recent transaction that should allow the company to advance the Ivana Uranium deposit at its flagship Amarillo Grande project through feasibility and into commercial production. After that, we're going to take some questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can. But before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this Blue Sky webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I direct listeners to forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of Blue Sky's corporate presentation. That can be found on the company's website, blueskyuranium.com. For Red Cloud Securities, I'd highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. So please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Blue Sky Uranium. Now, their focus is on uranium development in Argentina, and as part of the Grasso Group, they've been active in the country since 1993. It also plans to advance a portfolio of uranium deposits towards low-cost production. And the flagship, Amarillo Grande, as was the company's own discovery in this emerging uranium district that has potential to supply the growing Argentine market and the world. So with that said, I now turn it over to Nico and Guillermo to update the audience on Blue Sky.
Wonderful. Thanks for that introduction, Dave. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending this webinar. We do have some wonderful developments as of late, and we'll be talking about it. But like Dave indicated here at the outset, Blue Sky focused on uranium exploration in Argentina right now, with just under 500,000 hectares of property under our thumb. We are the largest and most dominant exploration company in the country. Where within our portfolio, we have just under 300,000 hectares of the Amarillo Grande. It's not just a deposit, where we do have a deposit there, the Ivana deposit, but it's an entire new district. And this district really represents a potential very low-cost district, in fact, to rank amongst some of the lowest-cost districts with some of the largest, and have potential for having some of the largest deposits similar to what we see in Kazakhstan. The Ivana, and then the key news that we'll be going over, and I'll talk more detail about it, is that we've been able to put our flagship deposit, the Ivana deposit, onto a path that clears a way financially and technically to advance it towards pre-feasibility, feasibility, and production. It represents a very important milestone step for our company. And disclaimer, there will be forward-looking statements that we'll be making throughout this presentation, so I do encourage you to read this disclaimer. And by the way, this entire presentation is available on our website, so you can download it and peruse it at your leisure. And Blue Sky. Why look at Blue Sky? Well, why look at uranium? Well, there's some very key points here. From stepping back and looking at it from a macro point of view, the uranium market on a global trend has been on a rise as of the last few years. There's a real demand for it as we see the world electrifying and looking for ways to generate electricity in a safe, secure, and carbon-free way. Uranium, of course, offers the absolute best way to do it. So we're seeing demand increase globally for uranium. Supply, of course, lags, and that creates the perfect conditions for a rising uranium market. A little more about that afterwards. In terms of our project itself, we've got the Ivana deposit. There's a value that underlines our company right now, just over 17 million pounds of uranium, just over 8 million pounds of vanadium. This was recently published, and it indicates a potential very low cost going forward. And of course, the recent transaction that we just announced with COAM, one of the most significant and important business groups in Argentina is that they have agreed to step up to earn 50% in our Ivana deposit by spending 35 million US, and that basically allows us to complete a feasibility and a feasibility study all the way up, and then at the end of that, they've agreed to fund the exploration, fund the capex cost, right? Excuse me, all the way up into production of the Ivana deposit. These costs could run anywhere, it'll depend on the feasibility study. On the PEA, it indicated they're around 300 million. So it represents a real significant financial commitment. And more importantly for Blue Sky, it represents a path to be able to take forward the Ivana deposit right through to production in a very short time period. So there'll be more about that as this transaction is fully consummated and we begin to unveil our next steps forward going as we proceed. Now, here's a map of Argentina. This is basically to indicate where our projects are located. You can see in the province of Rio Negro, the big yellow oblong oval structure there, that represents the location of our flagship Amarillo Grande project. And within that lies the Ivana deposit on the southern end. Now, this Amarillo Grande has over 300,000 hectares of property, so it represents a true district potential for this entire area, the potential to make multiple discoveries here and to rank it as some of the largest discoveries in the world. Just this morning, in fact, we announced the acquisition of an additional 80,000 hectares. It's not on this map yet. We didn't have an opportunity to update it, but it's just the further north, close to where the town of Mendoza is located, in the new emerging areas where there's potential to make new ISR in situ recovery type deposits. And we'll talk a little more about that later, but this is also a very exciting development, seeing that we've got a path forward here for our Ivana deposit. We're looking to secure additional emerging areas and add them to our project portfolio. Like Dave indicated at the outset, the Blue Sky is a member of the Grosso Group. Grosso Group basically is a team that represents management and manages the day-to-day and exploration affairs behind all our activities. Grosso Group is, I've been with the Grosso Group since back in 1993, inception, at the time with Joe Grosso, and we've had a lot of success over the years in Argentina. We've made 4 major discoveries as indicated there. And we're on a path here to solidify the Amarillo Grande discovery and make additional discoveries here going forward. More specifically, some of the members of the team of Blue Sky. Firstly, we have our chairman and director, Joe Grosso. Joe Grosso, besides being the chairman of the company and the president and founder of Grosso Group, is a very well-known and very well-respected person in Argentina. He's been inducted into Argentina's Mining Hall of Fame and brings an enormous network of contacts to our company that add a lot of value to the work that we do. And the other person here I'll just touch on, who will be speaking soon, is Guillermo Pensado. Guillermo is an accomplished uranium geologist with extensive experience in uranium. Worked over 30 years. He's worked with companies like Cameco and an invaluable team member. In fact, he too has been awarded the Exploration Geologist of the Year in Argentina by his peers. Now, moving on and just briefly to touch a little bit about uranium, the key here is to look at, well, where does the world's uranium come from? That's you can see that in the pie chart on the right-hand side. And you can see almost half of it comes from Kazakhstan. And that really has to do with the ability to extract the uranium at a very, very low cost and makes it very, very competitive. And the reason I highlight that is because our deposit here at Ivana and throughout the Amarillo Grande district have some very strong similarities to the style of mineralization that also makes them amenable to potentially very low cost for extraction, and the potential for making multiple deposits definitely exists there. So very, very exciting and interesting for our company. Uranium supply and demand. Well, like I said at the outset, the demand for uranium continues to go up, and it's and you can see from this chart the projections are for uranium to continue to rise. Production is going to be harder to keep up, and simply because it takes many years to put a uranium project into production, with the exception, of course, of Blue Sky, and we'll talk about that. So the price for uranium and this elevated price of uranium market, I think we are banking on seeing it last for many, many years going forward here. And uranium, the way it's priced, for those who are not aware, typically it's priced using long-term contracts directly from a producer to a uranium mine with a nuclear utility. They make a private contract, and these contracts can last, up to 15 years long, and the price is typically elevated from the spot price. A little bit here on Argentina, the country in which we're operating. Many investors don't appreciate that Argentina is a nuclear country, has a very extensive history in the nuclear space. They've been active in nuclear since back in the 50s. Besides, they have nuclear power plants that are in operation and more coming online. But even more importantly, they've got a number of particle accelerators. There's a pilot enrichment plant actually in the province close to our project, Amarillo Grande there. So the only thing that Argentina is not involved in is in the production of uranium currently. So they import all the uranium needs, and this sets up Blue Sky perfectly to be the first domestic supplier for uranium for Argentina. So we are rapidly now, especially with the transaction that we have with COAM, I think we are rapidly trying to seize that opportunity for Blue Sky. And with that, I pass it on to Guillermo, who will talk about Amarillo Grande project. Guillermo?
Okay, thanks, Nico. I will tell you rapidly about the Amarillo Grande project itself. I'm sure that you have many other questions about our last news, so I will try to go very over this project so you have the basics of this project itself. So Amarillo Grande is a project that covers a new district discovery by Blue Sky back in 2006 in the southern portion of the Neuquén Basin. This is an oil and gas producing basin with some historical uranium production centers in the north. And this is an area of more than 140 kilometers where it was found using urban radiometric survey mineralizations all along the district. The exploration is starting well to the north with mineralization on surface. The area named Santa Barbara, where you can find a yellow stuff on surface named carnotite, which is a uranium vanadium mineral. But when you start to prospect along the district, you can find that yellow mineral all along this district. So that took many years of prospecting for Blue Sky until we decided in 2017 to understand if all this superficial mineralization that we were seeing, it was only superficial mineralization, which could be a potential itself, but we understood that could be potentially something bigger, and this was what we finally found, that with the discovery of the Ivana deposit, where the superficial mineralization is just covering a sandstone-type uranium mineralization with higher grade and typically related to districts like Nico mentioned before, in Kazakhstan or in the United States or many other basins. When we found Ivana, we went rapidly into the definition of resources because we understand that this initial discovery located just on surface and very easy to explore and move forward could represent a potential low-cost operating production in the future. We had to prove it. We did the initial preliminary economic assessment back in 2019. We have some break there with the pandemic and delays, and changes in the market and the price. So we decided to present a new preliminary economic assessment this year, 2024, in order to prepare the project to move forward into pre-feasibility and feasibility. The project is located in a very desert area in the central portion of the Rio Negro province, a province with really strong knowledge on the nuclear sector, but although in oil and gas. They have been producing oil and gas for decades, and they have mining also. And due to that location, it's a very good area for exploration prospecting, not only for the geological environment, if not although because it's a desert in a depression, in a closed basin where we are not competitor of areas with other economic sectors. You can work year-round, and you still have very good infrastructure to operate. The geology, rapidly, as I mentioned before, that yellow mineral in the upper picture is carnotite, uranium vanadium mineral, typically found on surface or near surface, as you can see in that sampling pit, where you can see all the yellowish color in the first 2 meters is related to carnotite. This is typically superficial type mineralization, as you can find in Africa, Namibia, or in Western Australia, or many other places. But that superficial mineralization is just remobilization from deeper blind system related to uranium sandstone type deposit like those in New Mexico, Colorado, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, many other places. Today, uranium related to sandstone type deposit represent the main mines for production of uranium. But in our case, because we are near surface, where we are prospecting today, represent an area with very low exploration cost. And for the case of Ivana, because it's located from surface down to 25, 30 meters in salty or poor consolidated sediments, means that in a potential future production, you don't need drilling, blasting, neither crushing. So that was the potentiality from the economic point of view. The geological model, as I was explaining before, we are in a hydrofluvial system active in the Mesozoic, where you have many aquifers moving uranium-rich waters into a trap zone, like you can see in Kazakhstan, in different stratigraphic levels. And what we found by now is the first discovery, Ivana deposit, at the more superficial system, but we understand that we have potentiality to go or to find more deposits at different stratigraphic levels, as happened in Kazakhstan. And if you see the kind of deposit that you can find in those traps, I mean, the biggest mine, Inca mine, is almost more than 10 times Ivana deposit, more than 200 million pounds, with similar grade to what we found at Ivana deposit. What we have at Ivana deposit today is about 17 million pounds indicated containing uranium resources, plus 8 million pounds vanadium. And we have some extra inferred resources that we are planning to upgrade into into indicated in the next infill drilling before the PFS. This is how the deposit looks in a plan, in a map. You can see the light colors are related to the superficial mineralization in the first 5 meters, roughly, and the dark zone represent the uranium sandstone type mineralization below that superficial mineralization, so starting at 5-7 meters in depth. That is the zone with high grade and represent most of the volume of the deposit. And this is what we are using for the initial preliminary economic assessment. So we have a critical minimum uranium volume to achieve a potential economic production, but we had to prove that uranium can be recovered at low cost as we expected, and we prove it. with the initial metallurgical test work, where we could find that because the mineralization is in the very fine material of poor consolidated or unconsolidated sediments or coating the pebble, as you saw at the picture, you can pre-concentrate that material just by wet scrubbing and screening. So that separate the pebbles and the grains from the very fine material where the uranium and vanadium is located. So you reduce your initial volume to almost a quarter, and as a result, you increase your initial grade almost 4 times. And that pre-concentrated material is the one that you go into an alkaline leaching plant. That means a low environmental impact technology, and that recover 95% of the uranium and 60% of the vanadium, so giving you an overall processing recovery of 85 for uranium plus 53 for vanadium. So a very good recovery at very low cost and well-known technology that finally represent a lower cost. The type of mining for this kind of deposit, as I mentioned, is sediments with uranium mineralization. Finally, it was delineated a kind of a sediment or gravel quarry where you without requiring drilling and blasting, you can take the material, pre-concentrate and go into the plant, and finally you can take your coarse recheck material and backfill the pits and trying to do your remediation since production. So by the end of the mine, you have almost remediated the entire mine, and that cost was included into the preliminary economic assessment. So this is what we run at the last economic assessment, and Nico will summarize for you.
Great, thanks, Guillermo. So we did the PEA, the initial one that we did it fairly early on with different economic indicators, but the second one here, we did it to update the economics of it. And the key metrics that we're looking at here is, okay, what would it cost to put a deposit like this into production? And what we see here is just under, PEA numbers project pre-production capital cost, just under $160 million to put this into production. And this was key for us because, as we'll see, the Ivana deposit represents a singular deposit, but there are many targets that surround it. And each of those targets could, in itself, with additional exploration, turn into another deposit. And the idea being, of course, is that we could run a hub and spoke system with costs keeping, we estimate, maybe relatively around that level. So that's really one of the key ways to look at this. And then, of course, the second point is to look at, well, ultimately, what does it cost to pull out a single pound of uranium? And as you can see here, the total cash costs are just over $23 a pound. And if you include the all-in sustaining costs, it's just under $25 a pound. Extremely low cost, especially when you compare these around the world, with the exception of Kazakhstan. These are very comparable numbers there. So this represents potentially, this could lie amongst some of the lowest cost producers in the world, with potential here, additional exploration money to really increase the number of pounds and to add substantial volume to this. So that really is the big opportunity here with Ivana and ultimately here with Blue Sky. Now this is going to change obviously now with the new transaction that we've announced with COAM. We're going to be moving forward. We're going to be doing the feasibility study. We're going to get much more accurate numbers, but they're going to be around this level is what we estimate. So now we've got a deposit with some really low costs of production. Of course, the next thing to think about is, can we find more deposits? And this is a map here that steps back and looks at the entire district, the Amarillo Grande district. And the numbers on that map indicate exploration targets that we know we've already identified that have potential to make new uranium discoveries. Now, with the agreement with COAM, and of course of immediate interest with us here, are the numbers there, numbers 1 through 5. Those are numbers that are situated close to Ivana, and as I indicated before, a hub and spoke type production mechanism. Finding any additional uranium in those areas will be able, ideally, to operate it potentially as one deposit. So in the transaction that we've announced with COAM, they've agreed to fund the exploration of these additional targets. And if we make any new discoveries, then there would be a new negotiation to bring that into the joint venture partnership. We've basically given an option on that. And we've been able to carve that out. The balance of the Amarillo Grande district remains open, and for us, where we control it 100%. So any discoveries we make there, we're free to transact them as we wish. Now, looking a little more carefully here, here's the numbered targets, numbers 1 through 5. And we've done some drilling here, especially on the Ivana North and Ivana Central. And then more drilling is required, and now this additional drilling will kick in, especially for Cateo Cuatro and Ivana East, with the funding coming in at the joint venture from COAM. And so just looking back here at Blue Sky, I think we've got a very unique company operating in a very not just nuclear friendly, but also very business friendly environment in Argentina with a new pro-business Milei administration. We've got an advanced project here, the Ivana deposit, most advanced project and largest one right now in Argentina. That we've got a deal to be able to move this forward, to get it to feasibility study, and beyond that, push it towards production at a free carry for Blue Sky, and beyond that, we've got the balance of the Amarillo Grande project plus the acquisition of these new projects that we just acquired now, marking Blue Sky as a clear leader in uranium discovery in Argentina with substantial upside, especially in this very positive uranium environment. So with that, I think we could open up the floor to some questioning.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Nico and Guillermo. So great update and big news since your last webinar with us in May. So we are now going to start the Q&A portion of the webinar. So a reminder to everybody online that you can type your questions into the chat box and we'll get to as many as we can. Now, we already have a few question guys. So maybe give us a little bit of background on your new partner, Corredor Americano, or COAM as it is.
Well, I'll let Guillermo give more details about the group, but I kind of COAM is a big diversified conglomerate that has businesses. They own airports and shopping malls and mining and oil and gas. They're kind of like the Carlos Slim of Argentina, very family owned. But Guillermo, maybe you've got a little more detailed color on COAM that you can talk about.
Okay. Yes. COAM is part of the Corporación América. It's one of the biggest economic groups in Argentina, as Nico mentioned. I mean, to have an idea on that, I guess they still are the biggest airport administration in the world. So they are the biggest administrators with Aeropuertos Argentinos and different names. They also are involved in oil and gas. They have been involved in this sector of natural resources since almost 15 years ago. They started with a junior company with an acquisition and moved a company producing as the 40th company producer in Argentina. Now they are the 6th producer in the last 10 years. So they are, when they find that this is something that may help into their group, they are very, serious and aggressive trying to move things forward. This is a group that, although with presence in agriculture, in vineyards, in many other business, and we are very glad to have a partner like Corporación América helping us to move this potential a new uranium producing mine in Argentina after many years, potentially recuperate the self-supply of uranium for the country.
Okay, and what's COAM's long-term goal here? Uranium production, I'm assuming, but this, this conglomerate has its fingers in various industries, except for mining. until now?
Well, no, I should say that they have been in exploration in mining since, although like 15 years ago, they have a project in gold close to Barrick's mine Veladero. Actually, that project is in joint venture with other Argentinian family, and they are exploring there. But this found that this Ivana deposit could be potentially the project to move them into production.
Okay. And who's going to be the operator of the project?
We will have a technical committee, and because we have two challenges, as Nico mentioned. One, to move Ivana deposit forward into PFS, pre-feasibility and feasibility, trying to achieve commercial production as soon as achievable. But in the other side, we have to continue exploration, and this is part of the terms decided until this point with COAM. And we are the group with the more capacity and knowledge to move that exploration forward. So this will be a combination between both companies in this joint venture, trying to generate a win-win partnership.
And just to add to that, Dave, initially we're going to have a larger role in that as we've got the exploration team and the familiarity with everything. And then as we advance, there'll be experts in mining operations that'll be coming in, and there'll be a transition as we go along there. So the work will begin as soon as we close this deal in the next 30 to 90 days here. The exploration work will begin immediately.
Okay, so that was my next question. When should we have those definitive agreements in hand?
Yeah, the definitive agreements are, we've given ourselves 3 months to put together, but I can assure everyone that we're working very diligently to beat those timelines as quickly as possible. And of course, that's all subject to exchange and shareholder approval. So.
Right. Now, so far, the market reaction to this funding news has sort of been a little bit muted here. Why do you think that is at this point? And what does this deal actually do for Blue Sky, funding all the way to feasibility study?
Well, funding it all the way through feasibility study, and then paving a path, having the funding on hand, basically to go forward into production, represents a tremendous opportunity for Blue Sky. It allows us to fast track this forward and put this deposit into production, while A, we have a very positive business environment in Argentina, and B, in a rising uranium market. So I think the market hasn't really quite yet understood that and appreciated that. And then secondly, I think there could be some that are waiting. Well, let's see you get this thing definitively tied up and announced, and perhaps we'll begin to get involved there. So that's why we're trying to move this thing and fast track it as much as we can.
Okay, and you talked about perhaps a one deal covering the exploration grounds as well. So going forward, you still would have to fund your share of exploration, correct?
Well, they would fund. We have carved out the southern portion of the Amarillo Grande that's immediately pertinent to the Ivana deposit, with the 5 exploration targets that we showed earlier in our presentation. Those would be funded by COAM. It's part of the agreement. Beyond that, they don't have anything on it. Beyond that, it would be our project, our funding. So yes, we plus the projects that we announced this morning, we will be announcing a financing in short order to ensure that we got funding to be able to proceed on all those fronts.
Okay. Let's talk about the asset a little bit here. The Ivana asset, 17 million pounds of uranium, 8 million pounds of vanadium there, 1.5 million pounds per year of low-cost uranium production over 11 years. So that gives you an after-tax NPV 8% of about $228 million now. Now, the feasibility study that you're set about working towards, is that simply looking to de-risk your current plans in the PEA? Or is there any desire to change things up, improve things, grow the resource? What are the plans here?
Well, by the time that gets done, we'll also have executed some of the drilling of the other exploration targets. So it's possible that the feasibility study, if we make more discoveries, could incorporate additional resources. And secondly, PEA is a very sort of rough kind of calculation of what the metric economics and the cost to go forward into production. By executing and doing a feasibility study, those costs become much more accurate, much more dependable, and at the end of that stage, we can make a decision as to whether or not we could want to proceed to put this project into production. I don't know, Guillermo, do you have any other color on that?
No, I mean, as David say, it's part of the project itself. Probably improve some numbers there, but in general will be up and downs. As always, you can see at the PFS. The point is, the key part is trying to maintain the exploration active and potentially aggressive exploration in the surrounding, trying to define more resources that could be extend the mine life of the Ivana deposit. And for this, understand that the transaction discussed by now with COAM, I mean, we are only talking about Ivana deposit. And they are going to finance that exploration. If we define a new discovery, will we that joint venture have the option agreement to further take the first option of acquisition of that project. So for Blue Sky shareholder, we will like a win trying to sell more projects into that joint venture.
Okay. And how much interest will existing Blue Sky shareholders have post feasibility study, and then I guess post funding? Assuming they fund your partner funds the capex entirely.
Well, after when we complete the feasibility study, we'll be 50-50 partners, and then the capex, which is based on PEA numbers, estimated at around $160 million US. For them to earn, they have an option to basically build that out and earn an additional 30% interest, and Blue Sky gets carried free. So we basically could end up having 20% of production of a uranium mine here for no cost. So that's a great outcome, we feel, for Blue Sky and for Blue Sky shareholders.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay. Now, you mentioned potential for new deposits. They might come into the feasibility study. Is there any other work really that's needed to be required for the study? Met studies?
Well, for the Ivana deposit, yes, we need to advance with more metallurgical studies, geotechnical studies, and all those kind of studies that we need to de-risk and understand the deposit for a potential future production, and those are for the Ivana itself. And as I mentioned, the other works in parallel will be the exploration efforts, drilling.
Yeah, and it's already a low-cost project, partially because of vanadium byproducts here. Do you believe you can get vanadium recoveries even higher without impacting the already high uranium recoveries?
Well, when you see the overall recovery that is lower than uranium, is because the vanadium that you are recovering very well is the vanadium from the superficial or upper part of the mineralization, where uranium and vanadium are within the same mineral, namely carnotite. When you go in depth, where most of the uranium is located, is the primary mineralization. So the vanadium from in that zone is not going to be recovered. This is the difference between uranium and vanadium. I mean, the vanadium that you are recovering is basically from the superficial mineralization, and it's not the focus of the economics of the deposit, trying to recuperate the vanadium from mineral different to carnotite. So that is the difference between uranium and vanadium.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You have a couple of prospective areas here, as you mentioned, on this large property, Anit, Santa Barbara, various others, that are going to be carved out from the deal. Do you have any indications right now how big some of these other regional targets might get, or how aggressive your exploration will be in the short term?
Well, this is something that it was partially studied in the past. I mean, the Santa Barbara was studied in the joint venture that Blue Sky had with Areva back in 2012. and they did some geophysics there, geoelectrical surveys, and they found interesting deep targets at 200 meters, 250 meters, that they were not part of our goals at this point. Because we were focused in the superficial lower exploration zone, but now with the uranium market under resurgence period and more future conditions or better conditions for the market, we understand that it's time to start to go deeper and taking more risks in exploration. And this is part of the strategy for this northern portion of Ivana. And the other thing that we just published early today, was that we are starting the exploration in 2 other districts in the same sedimentary basin where Ivana deposit is located, the Neuquén Basin, that is well known for uranium mineralization in different sectors. When Arriba was exploring with Blue Sky in this southern portion, Cameco was exploring in the central portion of the country, of the sedimentary basin, with Calypso Uranium in those days, and I was involved with them in those days, so I know very well. And this is what we are trying to define. We are already advancing with the knowledge of exploration of the Amarillo Grande district. Now we want to repeat the exploration story with 2 other new districts that we understand may represent potential future areas for uranium. In those cases, related to potentially in situ recovery targets, which are today represent the more important producers in the world due to the low cost that they represent. And those are the new goals that we are just starting today.
And if I can add to that, I think some of the costs related to investigating and doing some of the exploration work at this stage for some of these other targets are really relatively low cost. So we plan to spend a little bit of money to get a lot of information to really begin to solidify our target. So any funding that we raise now, it's not going to be a very dilutive funding. It won't raise a lot of money, but we feel that the value that we could add to shareholders, identifying new targets, could be very beneficial, so that we could either, we can look at either bringing in additional joint venture partners or going at it alone.
Okay, so since you're talking about these these other new acquisitions that you announced this morning, were these really made possible by the COAM deal? Is this perhaps freeing up some funding requirements that you could perhaps focus on these?
Yeah. For sure, the COAM deal is the right timing for these acquisitions, because up until now and continue, our focus has been the Ivana deposit. Now, seeing that that's on a track forward right through to production, it begins to liberate us and to look at additional areas that we could be involved in. And these areas, although they've had some exploration work done in the distant past, recently they seem to be new emerging districts that I think we have some first mover advantage here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and on a couple occasions here, you've mentioned these projects may be ISR amenable, in situ recovery. So what makes that kind of project attractive to a uranium developer such as yourself?
Well, because they can be producing uranium without traditional mining, neither open pit or underground. They are just what is named also solution mining. That is not always amenable to apply. It's you can apply that kind of methodology, mining methodology, when you have certain geological condition, that it's a sealed aquifer, that they have uranium mineralization, and where you can pump the uranium in solution, or that you dilute but a process and take into production to recuperate without traditional mining, just by drilling and pumping. So this is in general terms, but that represents very low operating cost. I mean, today, Kazakhstan, which the most important country producing in the world, is I guess, at 100% in situ recovery. You have very well-known technology developed in the United States, in Wyoming, related to in situ recovery, some part in New Mexico, you have in Europe, and you have in Australia. So it's a very well-known technology, applies for the last 60 years probably. And this is where the uranium sector is also going. I mean, trying to produce with lower operating costs.
Right. Okay. Maybe can you speak to the current status of your working capital? Any plans to raise more equity here? Because it does sound like Blue Sky may need to go out and raise additional funding for this exploration. And I guess given the current valuation, is it worth the dilution right now to fund the exploration right now?
Well, right now we've got just over $1 million in our treasury, and we will be looking to raise some money, one to help us. It's nice to know and see that all the funding for our key flagship project is basically being put into place, and that's the funds for the exploration work, the feasibility study, and so forth, all underway. These new projects that we've acquired and the work that's required to go in there, the costs are actually quite minimal. Plus, we need costs to be able to cover some of our investor relations activities, to cover some of just overhead listing fees and so forth. So the working capital going forward. So we will and transaction fees for a lot of the people that are involved behind the scenes in putting this COAM deal together. So we'll be looking to do a relatively small financing. I think that the moment that our shares move into a lot less dilutive positions, that's when we'll make the decision to become much more aggressive in the exploration. But initially, I think spending a little money to understand a lot of information on these new projects that we're acquiring is going to be very worthwhile and very very worthwhile to launch the financing here.
Okay. And just a couple questions to wrap up here. As you mentioned, Argentina is a nuclear country. How supportive is the Argentine government to the uranium industry? How badly does it wish to become self-sufficient?
Very, very well, very much so. As we stated, they have a very burgeoning, and they're involved in every facet of the nuclear cycle in Argentina. And importing uranium is costly, and in fact, there's a local law. There's a law in Argentina which stipulates that if uranium is produced domestically, then any uses of uranium must be fed by domestic uranium. So, especially the current government is very much supportive of what we're doing. The province where we're active in Rio Negro is also very supportive of uranium exploration and uranium activities. In fact, it's a province that has an ownership in a company like a crown corporation called INVAP, that it does research and exploration and small modular reactions and reactors and whatnot in the nuclear space. So we are fortunate to be in the most supportive province and in a government that's very supportive. And the new government here of Malay is also very business friendly. So we have an excellent environment here. And I think the idea is to move our deposit as quickly as possible to the production stage.
Okay. And then, when do you intend to start looking at negotiating offtake agreements?
Well, offtake agreements, I don't know that we need to do anything right now. Our projections is to have most of the uranium sold domestically. And I think as we go through it, and of course, we'd have to have discussions with our partners here at COAM before we make I make any decisions as to how we're going to proceed on that. But
okay. And then I guess just to wrap up here, maybe timing on some of your catalysts here, the deal completion, feasibility study completion, investment decision.
Yeah. No, that very good. I think within the next 30 days, we'll be in a position to tidy up and announce the final closing of this transaction. And that, of course, will kickstart our exploration program in the surrounding areas, plus the beginning of a feasibility study, as the feasibility study here takes, maybe 8 to 10 months to pre-feasibility study will take 8 to 10 months to complete. We'll be looking to see how we can transition that into a feasibility study as quickly as possible, and then the permitting, over the course of the next year. And then beyond that, once a production decision is made, we'll be looking at the permitting that's required to go forward. But beyond that, we've got additional ground on exploration of both Amarillo Grande and beyond here in the new ISR targets we've acquired. So as soon as we can secure our initial funding, we'll kick off exploration studies on that. So there'll be plenty of news ongoing on multiple fronts. We have a great uranium market, and Blue Sky, we've been very patient over the last 15 or 20 years here to position ourselves to become Argentina's preeminent uranium exploration company. And now this is our showtime. This is where things will go forward. And that I predict in the next year to 2 years will be very, very exciting for uranium, for Blue Sky shareholders, and in this environment.
Okay. Nikolaos Cacos, Guillermo Pensado, thank you very much for joining us today.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, that's Blue Sky Uranium, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Red Cloud Securities will be back next Monday afternoon when I'm going to sit down with Athabasca Basin uranium explorer ATCO Mining. That's June 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So have a great day, and thank you very much for supporting Red Cloud's webinar series.